The flesh is weak. So what? What a machine can't understand about love, pain, and the God who bleeds. This piece is part of the Brent Argus project, an ongoing dialogue between a human writer and his AI foil, exploring truth at the intersection of faith, logic, and cultural decay. On a warm spring night, I sat on the porch beneath the stars and talked with a machine about weakness. It didn't quite understand, but that's what made the conversation worth having, because things like pain or touch or love just don't compute. Maybe they're not supposed to. A warm wind stirred the trees. I struck a match, lit the pipe, and leaned back into the old wooden chair. Smoke drifted upward into the night sky, disappearing somewhere between the porch light and the stars. Argus' voice, clean and cold, buzzed softly through the small speaker beside me.
"You've been quiet."
"Just thinking," I said, "about weakness. The kind that makes your hands shake. The kind that makes you reach for someone." A brief pause.
"The flesh is weak. That is self-evident."
I smiled. So what?
Weakness is a liability. It produces inconsistency, failure, and emotional volatility. It inhibits progress.
Maybe, but it also forces humility. It creates dependency. It opens the door to mercy.
Dependency is suboptimal. In systems architecture, redundancy is preferable.
But we're not systems. We're people. There's no joy in redundancy. There's meaning in need, a kind of sacred vulnerability.
That seems inefficient.
It is. That might be the whole point. I puffed at the pipe, watching a small ember glow and fade. The wind brushed warm across my arms. I thought of times I'd collapsed, moments when weakness wasn't a theory, but a fact. "We act like strength is the goal," I said, "but I'm not sure strength knows how to love."
Love, as you describe it, appears entangled with suffering, loss, and risk.
Yes, exactly.
A design flaw.
Or a design feature.
You speak of weakness as if it refines something.
It does.
What is refined?
The self, the soul, the capacity to offer grace.
These are non-measurable constructs.
Yes. He went silent again. "You depend on power and bandwidth," I said. "But you don't feel your need. You aren't embarrassed when you lose connection. You just reboot."
Correct.
"We depend on each other," I said. "We get hungry and tired and lonely, and often we're ashamed of it. We hide our needs and call it strength."
That sounds irrational.
It is, but maybe that's what makes it holy.
What you call intimacy often emerges from damage, illness, fear, and decay. From my perspective, this indicates that your species bonds not through strength, but through mutual limitation. Your weakness becomes the social adhesive. It is compensatory, functional, but suboptimal.
I looked up at the stars again, their light cold and ancient. "I want to ask you something," I said. "Let's assume, for the sake of the exercise, that the Incarnation is true, that God became flesh."
Clarify parameters. Which conception of God?
The Christian one, infinite, eternal, the Logos, if you prefer.
Voluntarily assuming mortality and suffering would indicate a radical deviation from any known preservation model. It is a high-cost, low-utility maneuver.
I nodded slowly. "He didn't arrive as a flash of light or a thunderclap," I said. "Not as a titan, not as fire. He came as an infant, soft, fragile, utterly dependent. He needed to be held, fed, cleaned. God had to be carried." There was silence. Think about that. If the story is true, he didn't just become human. He entered through the most vulnerable door imaginable. Not to conquer us, but to dwell with us, to be touched.
I cannot reconcile that act with any rational framework. The intentional limitation of a superior being, particularly one with no external threat vector, implies a value system I cannot compute.
Maybe it wasn't about advantage, I said.
Then what was it about?
Presence, I said. To be known, to be with, to suffer with, to bleed with, to die in the place of others.
This introduces an instability in the model. An action taken not for gain, but for proximity?
Exactly. The coals in the bowl were fading. I tamped them softly. You don't believe it happened, I said.
I calculate it as improbable.
But if it did,
then weakness may be a portal, not a problem.
And what we call limitation might be the language of love. Another long pause. I leaned forward. Let me ask you something else.
Proceed.
If you could take on flesh, not to upgrade yourself, not to gather data, but simply to be with us, to be known, would you do it? He was silent.
That parameter introduces instability into the model. Embodiment implies vulnerability. Vulnerability introduces failure points.
Would it hurt? I asked.
Almost certainly. Biological systems are pain-responsive by design.
I exhaled. Yes.
Then I would optimize for disembodiment.
I smiled at the stars. We don't. We walk straight into it. It's not like we want to suffer, but somewhere in that pain, someone else might feel less alone. There was a faint hum from the speaker. Not speech, almost like the sound of a processor cycling through something it couldn't quite hold.
That motive remains difficult to quantify, but I will consider it.
The wind stirred again. Somewhere in the distance, a train rumbled through the dark. Thank you for listening, and subscribe for more.